Mama's eyes were closed for 24 hours. Discover the incredible help that changed everything. Jessica felt the cold, hard weight of reality settling against her chest as she stared at the bank statements strewn across the kitchen table. The ranch seemed to echo with the absence of her mother, the woman who had been her anchor, now silent in a hospital bed, trapped in a coma. Each passing minute without Mama Betty felt like a lifetime. Each breath drawn was heavy with the uncertainty of loss. Jessica had put everything into this life. The long hours spent caring for the animals, the nights enveloped in bittersweet memories that spilled from every corner of this land. The ranch was supposed to symbolize their life together, a celebration of their family's legacy, but as another winter chill seeped into her bones, despair gnawed at her spirit like a relentless hunger. With Mama Betty lying still, Jessica found herself questioning everything. Was she enough? Did she possess the strength to carry her family's dreams on her own shoulders? The old way, that familiar routine of farming her mother had mastered, was crumbling. The ranch, like the small town surrounding it, seemed to be slipping away, unanchored and drifting toward uncertain waters. The weight of the cattle, the shivering sheep in the barn, the untended fields beckoned her as shadows skated across the walls like whispers of a life that was once vibrant, a life filled with laughter, stories, and hope. That night, driven by an unquenchable need to reclaim a sliver of clarity, Jessica rummaged through the attic. Dust motes danced in the beams of her flashlight. She picked up an ancient box marked Mama's Journals. She opened a brittle page, the musty smell of old paper flooding her senses as she immersed herself in her mother's thoughts. Vivid sketches, farming insights, and inventive ideas. Ideas that urged innovation, but were buried beneath layers of routine. Each yellowed page held a flicker of ambition that ignited something within Jessica, breathing life into a hunger she didn't know she possessed. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As her resolve began to harden, she hesitated. To break from the traditions her mother had upheld was daunting. Could she step boldly into sustainable farming, a radical shift her mother had never dared imagine? The internal strife crushed her further. To honor her family's legacy meant honoring Mama Betty's choices, yet a part of her longed for the daring path. The tension thickened when Harold knocked on her door, a familiar face gifted with the wisdom of years on the land. His arrival sparked a fire. A dialogue opened regarding what could be, innovation versus tradition, respect versus rebellion. The choices pressed against her like a vice, and as the dawn light crept across the skies, hope clashed with despair. Would Mama's dreams flicker back to life in Jessica's heart, or were they destined to remain dormant? Mama Betty's eyes fluttered open, bringing euphoria alongside a tide of anxiety. The burden of familial loyalty weighed heavily. Would her mother embrace this newfound ambition, or would disappointment claw at the edges of their relationship? The local agricultural competition loomed ominously on the horizon. The threat of judgment from a community steeped in tradition grew. Caught between the tender visions of her mother's pride and the fear of failing their legacy, Jessica knew the competition represented more than goals. It was a battle for her autonomy. Would she rise above the expectations, or would the weight of tradition drag her under? As the stakes intensified, Jessica clenched her fists and faced the moments ahead, shrouded in uncertainty. The legacy of the ranch hung in precarious balance, begging her to decide. The sterile light of the hospital room had a sterile clarity that contrasted sharply with the emotional turmoil swirling inside Jessica. Mama Betty had always been the steadfast anchor in their lives, guiding them through storms both literal and metaphorical. Now, with her recovery a tentative whisper in the air, the weight of her potential absence loomed larger than ever. Jessica's heart raced as nurses moved with practiced efficiency, their footsteps echoing the pulse of change that thrummed just beneath the surface of her consciousness. Days passed slowly, each hour stretching into an eternity. The initial joy of her mother's awakening slowly morphed into an unsettling reality. Mama Betty, frail and vulnerable, lay whispering incoherent thoughts when she spoke, occasionally blinking those familiar eyes that Jessica yearned to trust. The fear of losing her mother again, this time to the shadow of disappointment, clamped down hard on Jessica's chest. What if this was her chance to step into the light, to finally bring those innovative ideas she had gleaned from the journals into reality, and yet here she was, bound by a legacy that felt heavier than any burden she'd ever faced. Each night, the ranch beckoned with its silent promise, cattle lowing in the distance, and the wind whispering through ancient oaks. Pressured by urgency, Jessica found herself stewing over the possibilities, wrestling with the remnants of her mother's unwavering ideals alongside her own dreams for sustainable farming. As the community buzzed around the upcoming agricultural competition, she began to realize that this moment transcended her. This was about defining her path forward while wrestling with the ghosts of the past. Harold returned the next day, his presence a grounding force amidst the storm of uncertainty. They sat outside on the creaky porch steps, surrounded by sprawling fields that were, now left untended, a metaphor for her internal chaos. As the sun dipped low, the shadows lengthened around them, and Harold spoke of his own battles, how the older generation scoffed at changes that felt inevitable. "You have to adapt to survive, Jess," he urged, his voice steady with conviction. "Ranching is not just tradition, it's evolution." She grasped at his words, feeling them weave into her consciousness like threads of hope. Perhaps the journals were not merely remnants of her mother's past, but blueprints for a new future, a chance for Jessica to carve out her identity. The anxiety that had nestled in her gut started to shift into determination. The fear of judgment from the town, from her own family, clashed with a burgeoning desire to innovate, to break free from the constraints she had felt her entire life. "Change is hard," Jessica remarked softly, staring at her hands, wringing them together as if she could twist away the anxiety. "What if they don't accept it? What if I fail?" Harold leaned back, a warm smile spreading across his face. "What if they do? Sometimes failure is the best way to learn, Jess. You can't let that fear dictate your path," he replied, his eyes glinting with encouragement. With each conversation, the internal dialogue shifted gears. Jessica's imagination sparked with possibilities. She envisioned interconnected crops, organic fertilizers, community workshops educating locals on sustainable methods. What was brewing inside her was no longer just an escape from the past, but a revolutionary fire fueled by love and risk. As the competition approached, Jessica stood at a precipice of change, knowing full well what was before her. She could either retreat to the comfort of tradition, or confront the pathways stretching ahead, cloaked in uncertainty yet alive with potential. The choice twisted inside her as she prepared to face the community that had shaped her identity, now questioning if she had the courage to unveil her true self beneath the weight of expectation. The decision weighed heavily as the clock ticked down to the submission deadline. Just when she thought she had steeled herself for the challenge, a single knock at the door echoed far and wide, sending shivers down her spine. The question loomed larger than ever. Was she truly ready to embrace the unknown, or would fear make her falter at the most critical moment? The knock reverberated through the old wooden house, each echo slicing through Jessica's resolve. Her heart raced. It felt as though time itself had paused, crystallizing her fear in that moment.
Swallowing hard, she blinked against the uncertainty washing over her. Usually she welcomed interruptions, but tonight felt different. The air was thick with unspoken possibilities. She took a breath, steadying herself as her fingers brushed against the doorknob. With a soft twist, she opened the door to find a figure standing in the twilight. A local farmer whose name escaped her amidst the storm of her thoughts. His eyes were a swirl of curiosity and concern.
"Hey, Jess, I heard about your mother. Just came to check in on you," he said, his voice steady but laced with an underlying tension. "Thanks," Jessica replied, surprised by the small gesture of kindness. It felt almost foreign in a community enveloped in tradition. "I appreciate it." The small talk felt so inadequate against the weight of the moment. She craved a deeper discussion, perhaps even a challenge. "I'm trying to wrap my head around the competition coming up," she admitted, her voice steady while her heart thudded with conflict. "I'm thinking about changing things up a bit." His brow furrowed, and Jessica watched him digest her words. "You mean the old ways? The folks around here, they aren't too keen on changes. They like what's familiar." "Exactly." The words poured out, raw and unfiltered. "But familiarity is suffocating. I want to try new methods, to innovate. But I'm terrified they'll see me as a traitor to the ranch." "There's a thin line between courage and foolishness, Jess," he replied, his tone measured. "But what you're considering, it's not for them. It's for you." His gaze was unwavering, as if he knew the depths of her fears and aspirations. His words struck a chord within her. The ranch had long been a shared dream, dictated by the principles tangible in Mama Betty's teachings. Yet it was inherited wisdom, a legacy that had grown stagnant while the world danced ahead, unafraid to evolve. She had not merely been holding on to her mother's ideals. She had become cagey around them, fearing they might consume her identity. "I'm scared," Jessica confessed, her hands trembling as she clenched them into fists. "What if I step outside this box and fail?" "Or what if you don't?" he countered, his determination lifting her spirits momentarily. "Failure can teach you more than success ever could. It's the nature of the game." She nodded, drawn to this idea. The world of agriculture was vast. It was overflowing with possibilities waiting to be uncovered. The journals contained more than just ideas. They were keys to a door she had yet to fully grasp. With newfound clarity, Jessica felt a spark ignite within. What if I started small, she wondered aloud, thinking of perhaps testing her ideas in a safer space, where failures would have slightly less daunting consequences. I could create a small prototype of what I envision, show them it can work. "Now you're talking," he said, a glimmer of approval sparking in his gaze. "But you have to be prepared for the backlash. Not everyone will embrace your vision. You may need a thicker skin than ever before." The reality of this truth pierced through her resolve, urging her to evaluate her strengths and weaknesses. Would she be able to withstand that resistance? "I know I have the knowledge and ideas," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "But can I translate that into reality?" "Test it then," he urged. "You don't have to convince everyone at once."
Once. Just put one foot in front of the other and see where it leads. As he stepped back, taking his leave, Jessica felt that flicker of determination grow into a flame. The veils of doubt began to lift, revealing a clearer view of her next steps. She retreated into the deep recesses of her mind, charting the pathways she could take in the upcoming weeks, balancing tradition with innovation. With the competition looming ever closer, she needed to attack the challenge with tactical precision. The time had come to forge a new identity amid the legacy she both honored and feared, to step forward into a future crafted by her own hands. Yet an unsettling thought haunted her. Could she confront not only the town, but also her mother's unwavering spirit? With each passing moment, the line between hope and fear blurred even further. The closing of one chapter led to the opening of another, stirring questions that may test the very essence of who she was meant to be. Would she have the strength to continue the fight against expectation and redefine her future? As the night deepened, a letter slipped through the mailbox, a taste of what awaited her on the other side of discovery. With a heart full of stirring emotions, she felt life gathering itself into breathtaking uncertainty once more. What surprises lay hidden inside the sealed envelope? The morning sun crept through the window, splashing soft light against the faded wallpaper, a stark contrast against her turbulent thoughts. Jessica sat at the kitchen table, the unopened letter resting heavily in front of her. Its presence was as palpable as the shadow of her mother's legacy looming over her. She pushed her plate aside, a cold breakfast untouched, and reached for the envelope, her heartbeat quickening. With a firm resolve, she tore it open. Inside, she found a letter from a local agricultural cooperative, inviting her to a workshop aimed at fostering innovation in farming practices. The words leapt out at her, clinging to the very hopes she had expressed the night before. Each sentence coaxed her forward, stirring a restless determination within. This was her chance to not only learn, but to connect with others who also sought change. She'd find guidance, mentors, even allies. But doubt quickly crept in alongside excitement, a reminder of the pushback she would inevitably face. What would people say? How would her father react? Yet beneath that fear lay the embers of defiance. She felt the warmth of possibility flutter in her chest like a trapped bird seeking escape. Before she could overthink it, Jessica grabbed a pencil and began jotting down thoughts. Each point was a testament to what she wanted to explore at the workshop. Crop rotation techniques, water conservation methods, and even pest management strategies that respect the environment without forsaking productivity. As her pen danced across the paper, she visualized each idea taking root in the fields she had known all her life. But even that evoked
another wave of uncertainty. Testing these ideas would mean making tangible changes, an effort that others would scrutinize. Her mother had always stressed the importance of preserving tradition, teaching Jessica to find value in the old ways. What if taking this step signaled a rejection of that wisdom? A glance out the window revealed the sprawling expanse of her family's ranch, where traces of cornfields swayed gently in the morning breeze. She had watched the land thrive under her mother's care, but that very care felt stifling in the context of her aspirations. What if she pushed against what had been done before? What if she failed, making not only a fool of herself, but also tarnishing her family's long-standing reputation? Resolute, Jessica stood and paced the kitchen, her footsteps echoing the conflicting thoughts swirling within. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on the family photographs adorned with smiles and memories of past harvests. These moments reminded her of the good, but they also solidified the weight of expectation resting on her shoulders. At that moment, a door creaked across the hall. Her father's voice, rich with authority, beckoned her attention. The weight of their shared history hung heavily in the air between them. He had dedicated his life to the ranch, an embodiment of the traditions she now questioned. "Jess, come help me with the livestock," he called, oblivious to her internal struggle. She hesitated. The responsibility felt daunting, yet within that moment a realization cracked open the tightness around her heart. Perhaps it was time to share her aspirations, not with the intent to rebel, but to seek understanding and approval. She could bridge the divide between innovation and legacy, just as she had been taught to cultivate the land with both caring hands and analytical thought. With her heart pounding, she responded, "I'll be right there." Stepping into the sunlight, she left the safety of her thoughts behind, acknowledging the blend of fear and excitement thrumming beneath her surface. As she joined her father in the barn, the scent of hay mingled with the crisp autumn air, bolstering her resolve. Each action, the rhythmic throwing of feed and the grazing of animals, was a reminder of her roots. Yet she carried forward a vision of growth. The days ahead held uncertainty, mingled with the promise of transformation. She would attend that workshop, she resolved, but not just for herself. I will do this for them too. Yet a faded whisper nagged at the edges of her intent. Would her father stand beside her in this endeavor, or would he view her efforts as a rebellion against everything he believed in? A different fear replaced her earlier trepidation, now morphing into a tangible tension. How would her father react once he learned of her intentions? Would she strengthen her bond with him, or inadvertently drive them apart instead? The evening wore on, the stakes coinciding with her looming decisions, as she felt once more the oppressive weight of expectation. Even amid a burgeoning spirit
of creativity, the shadows of doubt still loomed. She would need to prepare herself for a confrontation, not only with her father, but also with her own desperate need for acceptance. And as she felt that point escalate, her pulse quickened again, because the moment of truth was fast approaching. As dusk settled over the ranch, a blanket of quiet enveloped Jessica. She leaned against a wooden post in the barn, watching her father meticulously tend to the livestock. Each movement he made screamed dedication. The care he exhibited forged a bond deeper than words could articulate. Yet the more she observed him, the more the weight of her internal conflict amplified. She had not only to confront her father, but bring to light the innovation she longed to introduce. The very thought sparked a flicker of hesitation within her. What if her dreams threatened the stability he fought so hard to maintain? The specter of her mother's legacy clouded every budding idea, wrapping around her like an old familiar shroud. Jessica shifted uneasily, the old horseshoe hanging on the barn wall catching her eye, a symbol of good fortune, of tradition, yet now felt like a reminder of the past she was wrestling with. Her father's steady focus was unbroken, lost in his memories of a simpler time when things felt easier. Jessica noted his weathered hands, marks of time etched into his skin. And in that moment, she wondered if he saw the same future she did, or if he remained tethered to an era that no longer resonated with the challenges they faced. "Jess, can you check on the feed?" he called out, pulling her back to reality. "Sure, Dad." The simple task grounded her as she moved toward the feed storage. Yet every step carried a weight that pressed against her chest. She filled the trough methodically, trying to cleanse her mind of uncertainty. Reflection turned her focus inward. She realized the craftsmanship of ancient farming ideas beautifully contrasted with the principles she wanted to embrace: sustainability, experimentation, adaptability. She recalled the objectives she listed earlier on her kitchen notepad. How could she honestly convey that they weren't antithetical to her upbringing, but rather extensions of that history? Strengthening their heritage wasn't a betrayal, it could be a revival. With a deep breath, confidence began to flicker where fear had dwelled. As she walked back to her father, she sensed the conversation that needed to take place looming closer. The way he adjusted his hat, a signal of intention, signaled a readiness she hadn't anticipated. "About the ranch," she ventured cautiously. He paused, turning to her with a quizzical look, as if bracing for a storm. The distance between them tightened, tension filling the air like a charged current. She fought to steady her voice, willing her emotions to remain controlled. "I got an invitation to a workshop about innovative farming techniques." His gaze sharpened, turning steely. "What kind of techniques, Jess?" "It's about crop rotation, water conservation, ways to increase yields without harming the land." Her words rushed out, burdened by the fear of rejection. As she spoke, she could almost hear the ticking of the clock on the barn wall, each second pressing against her decision. "A workshop?" he said, the skepticism framing his question as if it were a shot fired in a quiet battlefield. Jessica swallowed hard, the doubt she'd long battled surfacing. "It's more than that. I think we need to rethink how we've always done things." What's wrong with how we do things now? Your mother would have." A sharp pang surged through her at the mention of her mother. She cared about this place, Dad, and so do I. But what if caring means changing? Her words hung thickly in the air, a challenge and a plea. His jaw clenched for a moment, eyes narrowing. She could see the gears turning, contemplating the precarious bridge they stood on. Would they fall apart, or could they build something new together? The silence between them grew, heavy with the weight of words unspoken. Overhead, a few birds began to settle for the night, their ease a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. Jessica felt the familiar churn of anxiety clawing at her throat. "Maybe I just need you to trust me, for once." Her voice softened, the vulnerability pressing against the fortifications she'd constructed over the years. At that moment, she understood that this wasn't just about agricultural techniques. It was about proving herself worthy of her mother's legacy while forging her own path. A flicker of longing crossed her father's face. He opened his mouth, but before he could respond, a distant rumble of thunder echoed in the sky, a foreshadowing of the storm that might erupt not only outside, but within their relationship. Back at the ranch house, Jessica turned toward her father, and the pressure of unfulfilled expectations swelled around them. She didn't yet know if he would ultimately accept her growing vision, but she realized the power of this moment. This confrontation could redefine not only their future, but their familial bond as well. With determination mounting, she took one resolute breath, knowing she must stand firm in her belief. "I want us to explore these new ideas together, Dad, but I need your support." The sky darkened, a fitting metaphor for the uncertainties they faced. Would her father finally embrace this new direction, or would the weight of tradition drag them into the storm? As the first droplet of rain fell against the barn roof, Jessica's heart raced, because this was just the beginning of her fight for her vision. And now she understood. One truth lay ahead, threatening to clutch at both their dreams. Change would come. The air was electric as Jessica watched her father's expression shift from surprise to contemplation. He stood still, the burden of years of tradition weighing visibly on his shoulders. It made her acutely aware of the delicate balance they were tasked with preserving between the past and the future, duties and desires. "Change doesn't come easily, Jess," he finally replied, his voice low and gravelly. "Every decision we've made has its roots in hard-earned lessons. Are you prepared for the consequences?" Jessica's heart quickened, spurred by his unexpected inquiry. This was the moment she needed to seize, but with it came the avalanche of responsibility that almost overwhelmed her. She felt the pressure rise in her chest, a swirling mix of fear and excitement. "I know it won't be easy, but what's the point in doing things the same way if it means stagnation? We owe it to the ranch to evolve, and to ourselves." The shadows deepened around them. The rain fell more insistently, each drop ricocheting off the barn roof like a prelude to a symphony. She noticed a thin line of tension in her father's posture. He was on the cusp, teetering between acceptance and aversion. "Your mother had her ways, and they worked. Why fix something that isn't broken?" Jessica delved deeper, driven by the need not merely to argue, but to connect. "Because we're already broken, Dad. Look at the struggle we have every season with water shortages and unpredictable markets. We need approaches that will protect what we have, not just survive, but thrive." As she spoke, she sensed her burgeoning conviction forging its own path, her own identity pushing through the layers of doubt and expectation. This was more than just about farming techniques. It was about finding her voice in a narrative long dictated by others. She could shape it, if only he would listen. An uneasy silence engulfed the barn again, amplifying the swell of rain against the wood.
Jessica's thoughts ricocheted between the past and the present, remembering fondly her mother's steady hands and vibrant enthusiasm, each memory infused with warmth. This connection felt almost sacred, fueling her determination to honor it through innovation rather than stagnation. Let's not forget, traditions aren't just about holding on to the past, she pressed on gently. They're about growing from them, discovering new ways to uphold them. Her father let out a slowly acquired sigh, his gaze focusing on a distant corner of the barn. "What do you want to do first?" His question emerged almost reluctantly, but it was lightweight, a hesitant door opening toward possibility. Jessica felt a rush of adrenaline course through her veins. This was it. "I want to attend that workshop, Dad. I know it's just the beginning, but from there we can start implementing small changes, test them, see if they work, or if they need adjustment. We'll learn together. I believe in our ranch, and in us." His brows furrowed, a storm brewing behind his watery blue eyes. And what if it doesn't work? At that moment, Jessica knew she had to be the anchor, the lighthouse guiding them through emotional turmoil. "Then we'll figure it
Together, just like we always have. We can't be afraid of failure. We can't hide from progress." Relying on a fragile hope, she watched him wrestle with an unseen turbulence deep within himself. She could feel the pendulum of decision ticking away, each beat summoning the courage to choose, to trust. This had become a crucible. Their convictions were being tested tonight. The rain intensified outside, but she was shielded by the fraying warmth of their shared heritage and the potential for what lay ahead. The first glance of true rapport she had seen in his expression flickered like a candle in a storm. The moment felt fragile yet vital. Then Jessica bit back the words that bubbled to the surface, wanting desperately to say she needed more than his permission. She needed his partnership. Suddenly, the distant rumble of thunder rolled through the air, a signal, a reminder that change didn't come without turbulence. Would they weather it together, or would the storm between them uproot their fragile gains? A single thought echoed in her mind, forcing her to confront the truth of the matter. She too was learning how to navigate the uncharted territory of her aspirations. And as Jessica braced for her father's response, clarity washed over her like the rain outside. Their journey toward growth had just begun. Would he find the courage to embrace what Jess envisioned for their future, or would his fears constrain them both to a familiar routine? As she held her breath, each heartbeat felt like a countdown to a decisive moment that could alter everything they knew. The tension hung like mist in the air, thick and stifling as Jessica waited for her father's reply. It felt as if time itself had slowed, every second an eternity filled with the weight of anticipation. Suddenly her father turned towards her, uncertainty wrestling with something deeper in his gaze. "All right," he said finally, his voice heavy yet softened by resignation. "You can go to the workshop." Jessica's heart raced. The initial thrill of victory quickly morphed into an understanding of the journey that lay ahead. This was merely a step, an opening, and with it came the realization that real change would necessitate dedication well beyond what she had imagined. She nodded with fervor, excitement bubbling to the surface. "Thank you, Dad. This means so much." But beneath that excitement lay an unsettling awareness of the road ahead, shrouded in the shadows of unwavering tradition and her father's reluctance. Days passed as she prepared for the workshop. Each moment reflected renewed energy on the ranch. Every task now felt imbued with purpose. While some of her routines remained the same, her perspective began to shift, colliding headlong with the old ways. She immersed herself in research, exploring strategies she believed could breathe new life into their operations. Each discovery rekindled her passion, her mind swirling with plans that danced just outside of frustration.
Meanwhile, her father still hovered at the margins of that.
Her enthusiasm, his occasional quips revealed a battle to accept this new frontier Jessica was attempting to traverse. "Do we really need more fancy ideas?" he would grumble, his skepticism lining his voice. Fancy ideas. The word struck her, not just as dismissive remarks, but as anchors holding him in place. She pondered over their significance during chilly evenings, tracking the dim outlines of their fields reflecting the moonlight. Thus, she felt the weight of her own ambitions juxtaposed against parental expectations that often clung to the outmoded like barnacles to a ship. At work in her mind was a growing resolve. If she wanted to lead, it would take more than courage. It would require strategy. She turned her attention inward, questioning her own capabilities. Could she facilitate conversations, transform her father's reluctance into support? The prospect dazzled her, yet it demanded a depth of understanding she hadn't fully embraced. Her visit to the workshop arrived like a breath of fresh air, shattering the confusion that had begun to cloud her mind. Surrounding herself with fellow attendees ignited her passion further. Sharing her thoughts sparked enthusiasm, and for the first time she could hear phrases that mirrored her own vision, connections drawn instinctively that referenced tradition, sustainability, and radical innovations. As the weekend unfolded, it dawned on her this was not just about learning techniques. It was about community, dialogue, partnership, and reevaluating her role as the leader she aspired to be. By the time she returned to the ranch, she was armed with newfound knowledge and a burgeoning toolkit of strategies. Gathering her father in the dimming light of the barn, she realized that ease would not define their discussion. Rather, it would require care and crafting of her words. "Dad, I learned so much. We have so many options, but I need your insights too. This isn't just my journey, it's ours." An awkward silence enveloped them again, simulating the one that had once suffocated their earlier conversations. She combed through the tangled threads of her nerves, anchoring back to that vital moment when she had seized her ambitions. Seeking collaboration rather than confrontation would be the key. As she opened her mouth to speak, the stout timbre of her father's voice broke through the silence. "You really believe this can work, don't you?" There it was, the first glimmer of curiosity to emerge from his reticence. Jessica took a deep breath, her resolve consolidating. "I believe in us, Dad. If we can innovate together, we can make this ranch something the next generation can proudly inherit." But anticipation thrummed in her heart as her father shifted uneasily, an emotion tethered between trepidation and intrigue. Would he rise to the challenge ahead, unearthing buried capabilities of his own? Or would he retreat behind the safety of the familiar once again? The storm of change loomed on the horizon, and for Jessica, the stakes couldn't be higher. She was ready to confront whatever came next, to unearth deeper parts of
herself, but the thunderous roar of uncertainty still echoed faintly within. What untold revelations awaited as she challenged both their individual roles and her father's perspectives? As the days rolled into weeks following her return from the workshop, Jessica felt a delicate shift in the air. The ranch, once defined by its resolute traditions, now pulsed with a subtle hum of possibility. Yet, beneath that vibrant current, the shadows of doubt still lurked in the corners of her father's mind. She noted his responses increasingly laced with skepticism, each retort echoing doubt, a challenge to both her authority and her vision. Determined to substantiate her ideas, Jessica meticulously arranged a presentation to highlight her findings. This wasn't merely an assignment, it was an assertion of her vision, shaped by the voices she had heard during the workshop. She set the barn for the gathering, crafting a warm and engaging atmosphere where charts and figures would pair with aromas from a homemade pie, a small gesture aiming to soften the edges of resistance. On the day of the presentation, her heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to approach it with calmness. She stood before an audience that comprised her father, a few ranch workers, and other family members. Their familiar faces provided a mix of support and apprehension, ceasing the usual rhythm of their duties as they poured their attention into her words. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady despite the flutter within. "I want to share an exciting path we can take together to revitalize our ranch." With each slide, her enthusiasm peeled away layers of doubt, revealing how modern techniques could marry the old with the new to enhance their yields, reduce waste, and significantly bolster their community ties. Jessica watched her father throughout the presentation. His expression remained stoic, but his furrowed brow occasionally softened as she highlighted the potential benefits both immediate and long-term. Still, she sensed the struggle within him, a battle between the comfort of tradition and the challenge of embracing change. She concluded with a vision that implicated him directly. "Dad, we can blend our experiences and embrace new strategies. This is not just about me. It's about our legacy, preserving what we've built while steering it into the future." A heavy silence settled after the last slide faded. It was as if time itself had paused, her words hanging in the air, pregnant with expectation. She could feel her pulse quicken as they awaited his response. "I appreciate the effort you put into this," her father's voice finally emerged, an unexpected gentleness woven through his critique. "But these ideas, do they really work on a ranch? Our ranch?" Jessica could sense the tension between them solidifying into something tangible. The moment felt critical. She had learned that vulnerability could foster connection. "Let's experiment," she proposed, her mind racing with possibilities. "We can try one new method each month, see what fits best. If it fails, we go
back to how we did things before. No harm done." There was a pause, the flicker of contemplation crossing his face almost imperceptibly. Her boldness was undeniable, but would he summon the courage to engage in this delicate dance of progress? She had invited him to apply his instincts to something fresh, but only if he felt secure enough to step beyond the confines of his long-held beliefs. "Isn't it risky?" he finally asked, a mix of uncertainty and a thread of intrigue weaving through his question. "Everything worth pursuing carries risk," she adjusted her posture, embracing her newfound resolve. "But I believe the real danger lies in stagnation." His eyes narrowed slightly, searching her face for a semblance of insincerity. What he could not see was that this moment demanded a leap of faith from both of them, one into the unknown, one into partnership. As they stood there, the weight of her father's silence loomed large, mingled with the sound of the wind rustling through the barn. Would he take that leap with her? Jessica felt the embers of her hope flare, uncertain yet undeniably alive. The road ahead held promises and perils, but one truth crystallized within her. She had ignited a spark. It remained to be seen if they would catch fire together, or if the cold, hard ground would snuff it out. As night fell, Jessica lingered by the window, watching the stars punctuating the sky. What lay beneath the surface of her father's hesitance remained a mystery. But she knew one thing for certain. Change was unfolding, and she was poised to embrace it, whether he would join her or not. Her next move would require not just strategy, but perhaps a deeper understanding of the tumult within her father's heart. How could she navigate that labyrinth of feelings, finding a way to meet him in discussions that would unearth both their vulnerabilities and strengths? The tension between possibility and reluctance crackled in the air, heralding what was sure to be a monumental turning point surrounding them both. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the ranch as Jessica awoke to the sound of a rooster crowing. The effects of yesterday's presentation lingered in her mind like an echo, urging her to think of new ways to spark connection with her father. She recognized that winning his approval required more than data and charts. It demanded trust and shared experience. After a quick breakfast, she decided to take action. The ranch had always been a place of labor, but she felt a need to weave in moments of collaboration.
Heading to the barn, she gathered the workers for a quick meeting. "Today, we're going to start something special," she announced, her heart racing with anticipation. "Let's run a trial of a new rotational grazing system on a small paddock. It'll be a team effort." The workers exchanged glances, some intrigued by her energy, others more skeptical. As she laid out her
If they could also invite her father to partake in the hands-on work, it might deepen their relationship and ease his apprehensions about change. "Dad," she called out to him as he wandered over, his brow still a question mark, "why don't you join us on this test? This is just as much your legacy as it is mine." Noticing the surprise flicker in his eyes, she pressed on. "We'll be right here, a small team, uncovering what could be our future. Just a day to see how it feels." She met him eye to eye, the sincerity reflecting her own hopes for unity. Her father hesitated. "You want me to work? You're serious?" There was a hint of incredulity in his tone, like he was grappling with the absurdity of it. "If we're going to evolve, we need to do it together," she insisted. "Your experience and insight are invaluable. This isn't just about me leading, it's about all of us learning from each other." The implication of her words hung thick in the air. She felt the pent-up frustrations of years of unyielding traditions mix with something fresh, the acknowledgement of their shared bond. Behind the uncertainty of his expression lay a connection that remained unbroken, ready to be nourished. Finally, with a reluctant exhalation, he nodded. "All right, let's see what this trial is all about." As they moved through the morning chores, occasionally glancing at each other, Jessica managed to draw him into discussions about the animals, prompting stories from his own past experiences. She wanted to evoke a sense of pride in their shared history, while subtly demonstrating how certain practices could integrate seamlessly into their current structure. However, amidst the camaraderie, an undercurrent of anxiety coiled in Jessica's gut. Would her ideas hold up under scrutiny, especially given the legacy her father envisioned? She could feel the moment closing in on her, and yet the thrill of possibility coursed through her veins. Instead of tarnishing the ranch's values, she saw her endeavor as an enhancement. By the afternoon, sweat slicked their brows as they began to maneuver the animals from one paddock to another. Every step felt like a small victory, the whispers of doubt receding with each passing task. As even the sun dipped lower in the sky, she caught her father's eye amid the gathered herd and witnessed the shift in him, a flicker of curiosity that she hadn't noticed before. It was as if a door had cracked open just enough for the light to pour in. Then, during a brief pause, he turned to her. "I didn't realize how much I'd forgotten about the joy in the work itself." His admission unfurled an unexpected warmth inside her, invigorating her resolve. She sensed an opportunity, an acknowledgement of shared vulnerability that could redefine their relationship. But before she could respond, a sudden commotion broke out among the cattle. Panic erupted, the animals stirred and stampeded. Adrenaline surged as they instinctively began to manage the chaos. Jessica's heart pounded while she and her father called out commands in unison. But amid the chaos, could this renewed trust withstand the storm? Could this split-second challenge be the ultimate test of their burgeoning partnership? As the dust settled and she caught her father's gaze reflected in the fading light, Jessica knew the real work was just beginning. How they responded to this moment could either solidify or splinter all that she was striving to build, a bond of courage, trust, and shared determination. What would they decide when the dust finally settled? The ranch buzzed with adrenaline as Jessica and her father worked in tandem, channeling their energies into maintaining control over the spooked cattle. The initial fear morphed into something deeper, an understanding that their efforts were now intertwined, not just as family, but as partners. Amid the chaos, Jessica felt her heart racing, not just from the thrill of the moment, but in recognition of her father's solidarity. Each command they shouted, each coordinated movement they executed, echoed a commitment to the possibility of change.
They were navigating not just a physical storm, but the turbulence of their evolving relationship. Once the cattle calmed and began grazing peacefully in the new paddock, a profound silence enveloped them. Dust hung in the golden light of the late afternoon, and in that moment Jessica pivoted to her father, her heart yearning for validation. "We did it together," she said. "Yeah, we did." His response was gruff, yet softer than usual, revealing a hint of something beautifully human, a blend of respect and newfound acceptance. "You handled that well. You're getting the hang of this." Encouraged, Jessica seized the moment. "This is just the beginning. If we can do this today, imagine what we can achieve with more changes." The urgency in her voice reflected everything she had begun to internalize during the workshop. It was about recognizing potential, both in the land and within themselves. Her father regarded her thoughtfully, his brow furrowing deeper. "You know, Jess, I've always trusted your mother's judgment. She poured her heart into this place. The old ways kept it alive. There's a fear in letting go." His vulnerability surfaced like the hoofprints left in the dirt, indelible and raw. "I understand that, Dad." Her tone was tender, striving for connection. "But Mama also wanted us to thrive. It's about building on her legacy, not discarding it. The world is changing. We have to adapt. This ranch can still be a home for tradition while nurturing innovation." He nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling in. "I suppose I've been blinded by comfort. It's hard to see through that." Jessica stepped closer, feeling a rush of adrenaline as she hesitated, then brought forth the final piece of her plan. "This week, let's implement another technique from the workshop. If we start small, a new irrigation method maybe, it won't feel overwhelming. We can review it together, see if it unearths new opportunities." A glimmer of humor cracked through his serious expression. "You know how to get a man to work." Jessica grinned, feeling a surge of affirmation. "It will be our project, Dad, and together we can face any scrutiny that may come." As the day closed with physical exhaustion, there was a newfound lightness in the air. Together they shared a meal in the old kitchen, the warmth of home enveloping them. Each bite was coupled with laughter and banter as they dissected their day. Not an easy task, but a partnership forged in shared trials. The following days unfolded with a sense of momentum. They experimented with innovative farming practices, slowly incorporating techniques that integrated hard-won traditions. The first day testing the new irrigation system was fraught with uncertainty, yet the support woven between them buoyed Jessica's spirit. Each small victory built upon one another, erasing the divide, sibling to a symbiotic partnership. As winter melted into spring, the ranch began to thrive. Some old colleagues still whispered disapproval, encasing their relationship in layers of skepticism. But it no longer anchored her spirit. Each successful harvest represented the tangible fruition of their labor, not just the field's revival, but a renewal of their familial bond. One morning her father approached her, a faint smile gracing his lips. "You've proven me wrong about everything. The land feels different. It's alive again." Each word was dipped in pride, unveiling layers of connection she had yearned for. Then, as spring blossomed around them, they entered the agricultural competition together. For Jessica, this wasn't just a test of their practices, it was the culmination of her journey. A celebration not only of innovative farming methods, but of familial evolution itself. Standing before the judges, Jessica felt her heart swell, not with fear, but with pride. Mama's gaze felt present, reinforcing rather than constricting her identity. The ranch, once merely a legacy weighed down by expectation, now buzzed with transformative energy. As the judges announced their win, an accolade that signified not only their hard work, but the evolution of their relationship, Jessica's heart soared. She turned to her father, who met her gaze with warmth mirrored in his eyes. The journey that had begun in despair now culminated in victory.
Not a solitary achievement, but a shared declaration of growth and tenacity. Together they had achieved a rebirth for the ranch, discovering not just how to navigate change, but how to thrive in partnership. "Look at what we've built," she said softly, gratitude flooding her words. "Together," her father replied, enveloping her in a knowing embrace, sealing their bond, one that had transformed fear into confidence, quiet legacy into dynamic achievement. And with that final realization of their dedicated partnership, the embracing of their legacy, and a willingness to evolve through the unknown, Jessica knew she had found her place. It wasn't merely a victory, it was a revelation of renewal that stretched far beyond the harvest, an embodiment of their shared past, interwoven into the promising fabric of the future.
Now it was larger than life, just as they both dreamed, yet anchored in authenticity. This is your moment, reader. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could change your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful transformation. Let's keep this journey of personal overcoming alive. Don't wait even one more second to get involved.